Here to talk about some of the political hot topics of the week, our guru from KCBS, Doug Sovern. Thanks for joining us. Starting off with talking about the politics of masking. Boy, just watching the State of the Union was almost surreal, seeing
hmm
people from both parties unmasked there in the same room. Where are we at with that?
Yeah, isn't that extraordinary that this is where we've gotten? I mean, I can just tell you in my own personal life, in the last week, seeing the masks come off, I'm seeing people's faces and thinking, "Wow, I did not think that's what your nose or mouth looked like at all. I've been completely wrong about what the rest of your face looked like." And yeah, that was the first time in 2 years that we've seen everyone there in the chamber. They're not wearing masks. They did have some social distancing going on, so there were empty seats, and there were Republicans who refused to go because they had to have a negative test to be there, and some just said, "I'm not going to take a test." So there were empty seats. But here in California, of course, the politics of masking has been quite complicated, and things are changing. And now the indoor mask mandate in public places in California is no more. And as of next Friday, a week from this Friday, schools will not be required to mask the kids.
Well,
It's
let's
taken
talk
a
a
long
little
time.
bit about
Yeah,
that. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. Well, it
it
depends on who
has
you
been.
ask, of course.
Right, right.
But counties and school districts can still make up their
hmm
own rules. How much do you think politics are going to come into play with that?
I think union politics count a lot there. And yes, it's true. San Francisco has already said they're not going to take off the masks in the schools. Oakland hasn't said yet what they're going to do. There will be a lot of districts around the state that still mandate that their kids wear masks. And, if you talk to parents, people are on both sides of this issue. There are those who are adamant that the kids can't wear masks. This is terrible for them. Why is it taking so long? And then there are those who say, I'm not ready for this. Too many little kids are not vaccinated. My kid will keep wearing a mask. I think it's too soon. I mean, you can find people on both sides and they feel very strongly about it, but certainly at the local level and at the state level too. The teachers' unions have had a lot of clout here. I mean, they have been pressuring the governor behind the scenes to keep the masks on longer because the teachers don't feel safe. And they point to the vaccination rates, which are much lower. 80+% of California adults are vaccinated now fully, but only like a third of the younger kids are. So, and the ones below 5 aren't at all. So the teachers are still uneasy, and that is part of the reason it took this long for the governor to lift the state mandate. And at the local level, that is one reason some districts are not going to be ready to do this. And a lot of them are surveying their parents and their teachers to see where they stand and how they feel. But there is no question that some Bay Area districts certainly will keep those masks on at least a little while, if not maybe the rest of the school year beyond next Friday.
Another hot topic when it comes to politics and healthcare, the single payer proposal for single payer healthcare just died again. Does this ever
Right.
have a chance at passing?
You know, not anytime soon. I mean, it is dead for this term. There are those who believe passionately in it. Remember, Medicare for All was a big campaign push in the last election. It'll come back again. But I think for now it is really dead, at least in California, because they're not going to be able to introduce it again till the next session. And there's just not any momentum for it. There's too many questions about how you pay for it. And you're just, I think it's going to be a while before, if we ever see something like that in California and nationally. It'll be incremental, but it's going to take some time.
The election filing deadline, let's talk about that coming up on
Mm.
March 11th. You're not seeing any big challengers coming in for the governor.
Yeah, isn't that interesting that the state mask mandate will be lifted for schools the day of the filing deadline, March 11th? That is the deadline if you want to run for office in June. Anybody out there who wants to run, you got just another week, and then you've got 3 months before the June 7th primary. Yeah, I mean, no one at the statewide level, no one is challenging the governor other than Brian Daly, who's a little known Republican state lawmaker from way north in the state. Nobody big seems to be in the wings. Businessman John Cox has bowed out. Doesn't sound like former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer is going to run. Is anybody going to step up from the Republican Party in a major way? And the same is true for Alex Padilla, a freshman senator who was appointed just a year ago. Nobody, either from the Republican Party or from the left of his own party, they may be running essentially, get a cakewalk here to June and then on to November. And,
Well,
and in many of these races, that's the case.
it's so interesting because, I mean, of course, Governor Newsom just faced a recall, made it through, of course,
hmm
with shining colors. But is that interesting to you that even after that, nobody would step up to even give him a minor challenge?
Yeah, I mean, he has the minor challenge from Daly, but yeah, well, a lot of the Republicans and the donors who support them really blew it or shot what they had in the recall and lost badly. And a lot of them are still licking their wounds and saying, "Well, we took our best shot, didn't happen. Why are we going to do this 2 years in a row?" I think if there hadn't been the recall, you would see some significant challengers. But a lot of the people who ran last year are not willing to try it again, and the donors on the sidelines are not eager to open their checkbooks again for another campaign in which they get at best 40% and lose 60-40, which is interesting because the governor's approval rating is not that great. He's dropped below 50% for the first time. A lot of people are disappointed in him, but he's still just an overwhelming prohibitive favorite because there is nobody with deep pockets and name recognition who can represent the more moderate wing of the Republican Party who can succeed statewide at that level.
It is interesting that the recall seemed to have the opposite effect in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you actually had a conversation with the former Republican contender for governor, John Cox, and it sounded like maybe he's sick of politics.
Yeah, well, the guy has run for office a lot and never gotten anywhere, and this would have been his third try for governor. Uh, he just laughed and said, "No way! No one listened to me the last time. Why would I do that again?" He seemed pretty fed up with the whole process and was actually surprised that people weren't sure that he's not running again, and that I would even ask him. I mean, I said, "Oh, maybe you'll run again." He's like, "No way!" But he's never come out and made an official statement, so people weren't sure. But he just said no. He's done with this. He's fed up. He got nowhere. He finally realized it that maybe he'll try again in a couple of years for something else. But he finally realized that throwing away $10 million or more of his own money on a quixotic campaign that gets no traction is probably not the best use of his time and money.
All right, sounds like a lot of lessons were learned in the recall election. Anything else we should be keeping our eyes and ears out for over the next week or so?
Well, just, I mean, what is the impact of the State of the Union speech from the president? He got pretty good marks in the polls, especially for a president whose approval rating is rather low. People responded generally favorably. Does it move the needle much in his overall approval over the next week or two? Probably not too much, but maybe people feel a little bit better about him and his leadership on Ukraine and on the economy, at least in the very short term. That might not last long, but let's see what kind of impact that has.
All right, our political expert, Doug Sovern from KCBS Radio. Thanks for joining us on CBS News Bay Area.
Thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure.